I'm 31 now, but this happened when I was 26. My Uncle Tom passed away that winter. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. He was one of those people who filled every room, loud and kind at the same time. His funeral was small but emotional. I remember thinking how quiet his house felt afterward. That night, my mom asked me to help clean up after the after-funeral gathering. It was just family, close friends, a few neighbors. We stayed late, sorting plates and folding chairs. I wasn't sad exactly, just drained. Grief has a way of making everything feel heavier. By around 9 p.m., most people had gone home. My mum and aunt were in the kitchen washing dishes while I carried trash bags out to the bins near the garage. It was snowing lightly, that kind of soft, dry snow that doesn't make a sound when it falls. The house sat at the edge of a wooded area. Uncle Tom had loved the view, said the trees made him feel less alone. But that night, they just looked dark. I came back in, brushed off my coat, and started collecting empty glasses from the living room. The smell of coffee lingered in the air. Everyone spoke in hushed voices, as if Tom might still be listening somewhere. When I came back into the kitchen, my mum asked if I'd just gone into the basement. I said no. She frowned. "I thought I heard someone down there," she said. My aunt nodded too. We all went quiet for a second, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the fridge. I shrugged it off. Probably the old furnace kicking on. Uncle Tom's basement had always creaked like that. But still, I decided to check before they worried more. I opened the door, flipped the switch, and stared down the steps. The light at the bottom flickered once, then steadied. "Hello?" I called. My voice echoed back. Nothing. The basement was cold, the air heavy with that damp concrete smell. I walked slowly past the washer and old storage boxes, feeling stupid for expecting anything. Then I saw it. One of the folding chairs from upstairs was sitting in the middle of the basement floor. I knew we'd taken them all back to the dining room. I'd done it myself. I stared for a few seconds, trying to think of a reason. Maybe my cousin came down and forgot. But everyone was upstairs. Then, from behind the shelves, something scraped against the floor, a slow, dragging sound. "Who's there?" I said, louder this time. Footsteps. 2, maybe 3. Then silence. I started backing toward the stairs, heart racing. I didn't see anyone, just shadows between boxes, but I could feel someone standing there watching. I reached the top step just as the light flickered out completely. I heard quick footsteps rushing toward me, heavy and uneven. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and stumbled back. My mom screamed from the kitchen. "What happened?" "Someone's down there!" I shouted. We called the police immediately. My hands shook so hard I could barely dial. When the officers arrived, they searched every corner of that basement. No one was there, just the chair in the middle of the floor. They said there were no footprints in the snow outside, no signs of forced entry. But when one of them lifted the chair to move it aside, he froze. There were wet marks on the seat, like someone had just been sitting there. The police told us it might have been an animal that got in somehow. A raccoon, maybe. None of us believed that, but we nodded. They took a quick report and left. My mom didn't sleep that night. She sat in the living room with the lights on, clutching a photo of Tom. I tried to act calm, but every sound made me flinch. Around 3 a.m., I thought I heard footsteps again, slow above us this time. But when I checked, the hallway was empty. We left early the next morning, locking up the house behind us. A month later, when the estate was settled, my mum went back one last time to collect some things. She called me from the driveway, voice trembling. "Someone's been down there again," she said. In the middle of the basement, just one chair. And sitting on it was an old funeral program, folded neatly, with my name written on the back. I was 25 when my grandfather passed away. He'd lived in a small rural town about 2 hours from where I grew up, and everyone in the family agreed we'd stay overnight after the funeral to help my grandmother get through it. It wasn't the first funeral I'd attended, but it was the first time I'd stayed in the house of someone who'd just died. That night, there were 9 of us. Cousins, uncles, aunts, spread between guest rooms, couches, and air mattresses. It felt crowded, but comforting, until it didn't. After the service, everyone gathered in the living room for dinner. It was quiet, respectful. We shared stories about Grandpa, how he'd never learned to use a cell phone, how he'd always fallen asleep during baseball games. It actually felt good to laugh again. Around 10 p.m., most of my relatives had gone to bed. I volunteered to sleep in the small guest room near the back door because it was the only one left. I remember the faint smell of mothballs and old wood. My grandmother hugged me goodnight, thanking me for staying. I turned off the lamp, crawled into bed, and stared at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sound of wind against the windows. Sometime around midnight, I heard someone walking in the hallway, slow, dragging steps. I assumed it was my uncle checking on Grandma, but then the footsteps stopped right outside my door. After a few seconds, there was a soft knock. "Yeah?" I said, half asleep. No answer. The handle turned slightly but didn't open. I figured someone had gotten confused in the dark. When I mentioned it the next morning, nobody admitted to being up. My uncle swore he hadn't left his room. Grandma said she'd been asleep since 10. I laughed it off, but the look on her face lingered. She looked genuinely unsettled. The next night, the rest of the family went home, but I stayed behind to help my grandmother pack some of my grandfather's clothes for donation. By 11 p.m., she went to bed, leaving me in the living room with boxes and old photo albums. That's when I heard it again, the same slow footsteps in the hallway. I froze. "Grandma," I called. No reply. The sound stopped at the same spot, right outside the guest room. I stood up, trying to calm myself, but then the light in the hallway flickered on. Through the crack under the door, I saw a pair of feet, bare, pale, motionless, facing toward me. I didn't move for almost a full minute. Then, as suddenly as it started, the light went out again. I finally forced myself to open the door. The hallway was empty, but at the far end, near the back door, I saw the guest room curtain moving, as if someone had brushed past it. I stepped closer. The back door was unlocked. I knew for a fact I'd locked it earlier. When I looked outside, fresh mud tracks led from the porch into the kitchen, faint, narrow, like someone had walked barefoot through wet dirt. "Grandma, stay in your room!" I shouted. I grabbed the first thing I could, a heavy lamp, and stood by the hallway entrance. The silence felt endless. Then a faint creak, the sound of weight shifting on the guest bed. I turned on the light. The bed was slightly indented, as if someone had just stood up and walked away. The police came after I called them. They searched every inch of the house, every closet, even the attic. They said the mud tracks were probably old, and that maybe I'd imagined the sound. But Grandma found something the next morning that shut everyone up. A damp, folded funeral pamphlet lying on the nightstand in the guest room. It wasn't from Grandpa's funeral. It was from my grandmother's first husband's, the one who died 40 years ago. My grandmother moved out of that house 3 months later. I haven't been back since. Sometimes, when I visit her new place, she'll stop mid-conversation and glance down the hall. Once, I asked her what she was looking at. She just said, "He always hated sleeping alone." I'm 31 years old, and this happened 3 years ago, right after my grandmother's funeral. She lived in a small town in rural Pennsylvania, and we held the service at the same church my family had attended for generations. I'd always been close to her. She practically raised me, so I stayed behind after most relatives had gone home. My mom and uncle were cleaning up the leftover food in the church's dining hall, and the last few guests were slowly trickling out into the cold evening air. By the time the sun began to set, there were just a few of us left. My Uncle Frank, his friend Bill, and an older man I didn't recognize. He looked like he was in his 60s, with an outdated grey suit and thick glasses that reflected every bit of light. I assumed he was one of Grandma's old friends and didn't think much of it. The 5 of us gathered around one of the folding tables, sipping coffee that had gone lukewarm. The air smelled faintly of flowers and bleach. I remember joking with Frank about how Grandma would have been annoyed at how quiet we were being. That got a small laugh, even from the stranger, though his chuckle came a second too late. When we finally started cleaning up, my mum told me to load the leftover trays into the car. I carried them out one by one, and by the time I came back, everyone was gone, except for that man. He was standing near the church door, staring at one of the framed photographs on the wall. I tried to make small talk. "Did you know my grandmother?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Everyone did. She used to help at the old house." That confused me. Grandma hadn't lived in the old house for decades, not since before I was born. I asked him which house he meant, and he finally turned around. His eyes looked wet, almost like he'd been crying. "The one with the blue shutters," he said softly. "The one you never locked." I felt a chill then, though I didn't know why. I told him politely that we were closing up and that I'd have to lock the doors soon. He nodded but didn't move. Then he asked if I still visited the house often. It was such an odd question that I just lied and said yes. He smiled at that, a slow, uneasy smile. "Good," he said. "You should keep visiting. Some people never leave it." When I turned to grab my jacket, I heard the sound of the front door creaking open behind me. But when I looked back, it was closed. The man was gone. I locked everything up quickly, turned off the lights, and headed to the parking lot. But his car wasn't there. Just my mom's. The gravel lot was empty, the air cold and silent. That night, I stayed at my grandmother's old house, the same one with the blue shutters. My family had left it vacant for years, using it mostly for storage. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of footsteps upstairs. I froze. The house had been locked. No one else was supposed to be there. The steps moved slowly, deliberately, heel to toe, pacing the hallway. "Uncle Frank," I called out. Nothing. Then a soft male voice from upstairs said, "You shouldn't have left the lights on at the church." I ran. I didn't even grab my bag. I sprinted out into the cold and didn't stop until I reached my car. I didn't tell my mom everything, just that I thought someone had broken in. We checked the next morning. All the doors were locked from the inside. No footprints, no open windows, just a faint smell of coffee in the kitchen and one folding chair pulled away from the table, like someone had been sitting there all night. It's been 3 years, and no one ever figured out who that man at the church was. We checked the guest book. His name wasn't there. Sometimes when I drive by Grandma's house, I swear I still see that chair through the window, angled toward the front door, waiting. I've never gone inside again.